Hey everyone, welcome back to the Gaming Lore channel. It's been a while since I've done one of these games, but since we're relaunching this whole project, I thought it'd be fun to do one of my favorite games, Final Fantasy XIV. The goal is to have an archive of the lore from this game, so I figured I'd start with each job quest and build out from there. First up is the story behind the warrior. The lodestone describes the warrior as men and women that have harnessed their inner beasts into unbridled savagery on the battlefield. In times of war, these warriors would be on the front lines, but as time passed, this form of fighting faded into obscurity. Of course, it wouldn't be long until you, the Warrior of Light, found yourself in possession of the Warrior's Soul Crystal. Your journey begins after receiving instructions from Warnzone, the Guildmaster of the Marauders, to protect Costa del Sol from a horde of Archelon. Soulqueep joins you, as she always does during your Marauder missions, and together you fight off the horde with a Rogadin named Curious George. As you push away the horde, Soulqueep starts to suspect that your friendly companion is a warrior, a fighter using the ancient techniques of a group that had disappeared after the company of heroes disbanded. George notices you as well in a fight and is so impressed with your strength that he offers you the Warrior Soul Crystal, explaining that to be a true warrior, you'll have to release and tame your inner beast. Every meeting with George from that point on has him trying to challenge you further and further to unleash your inner beast, but he finds himself scaring the people he tries to protect. The majority of his time is spent researching his ancestors and passing on their teachings to you. You grow closer as you both protect the town of Wineport, and he tries to let them know that he means them no harm. One day, while the two of you defend the village, George loses control of himself, forcing you to have to fight your mentor. Defeating him, you snap him out of his frenzy, and he vows to never lose control again. Thankfully, after so long defending Wineport, he gains the newfound respect of its people. This gives you some insight into his motivation to grow stronger and train you. Now that Wineport knows what a warrior can do, he wants to spread the word of his ancestors' way of fighting as far as he can. The next time you meet with George, he wants to introduce you to his brother, Broken Mountain, who just recently found new techniques from their ancestors. Mountain explains that he has retired from his warrior ways and is interested in the pursuit of knowledge. In particular, he aims to learn about a legendary hero by the name of Mithril Heart. In an attempt to convince him to come back to fighting, you make a deal. In return for proof that Mithril Heart is more than just a legend, Broken Mountain promises to learn the new techniques and teach them to you. After some searching, and of course, fighting, you collect an axe with the initial MH, which serves as enough proof. Sure enough, Broken Mountain promises to take up his axe again and teach you everything he learns from his research. Broken Mountain and George seem unstoppable when fighting, but as you keep protecting different cities, Mountain witnesses George lose control. This ends up making Mountain take charge of your training exclusively, as he forbids George from pushing himself. Eventually, George joins the Maelstrom in an attempt to raise his renown as a warrior within the Grand Company. He carries out their operations in defending the surrounding cities, but Mountain continues to worry. He knows that George is holding himself back during his missions, so he doesn't lose control again. The only thing that Mountain thinks will help is by having you follow in Mithril Heart's footsteps and control your own inner beast, to then find a way for George to control his. While trying to fight the same formidable foes that the legendary hero fought, you continue to help George in his missions while working for the Maelstrom. Over time, you gain more of an understanding on how to fight ferociously, but it isn't until you put yourself in danger to protect your allies that you really learn how to take control for the sake of others. When Broken Mountain hears about your discovery, he compares it to George's most recent injury after he dived over a bomb to help keep those around him safe. Despite coming to the same conclusion, however, George is still terrified of losing control. This becomes more apparent after the Maelstrom asks for the three of you to help against an upcoming attack, and George declines in fear of what could happen. You slap him into his senses, and sure enough, it works. The entire operation is a success, and the Maelstrom asks for the help of the three of you against a future attack from the Sahagin pirates. Broken Mountain may be excited about this, since he is getting closer to bringing the way of the warrior into a more public space, but George still doubts himself. It isn't until the Sahagin are pushed back that George has one final inward struggle that he manages to regain control of his inner beast. Hopefully this time, for good. In response to the three warriors being the saving grace of so many operations, the Maelstrom asked for both Broken Mountain and Curious George to train their own set of troops in their way of fighting. After so long, they finally have what they're looking for. It doesn't take long for the two brothers to train their troops and really spread the word about the ferociousness of a warrior. So much so that a group of people challenged them to a fight. George and Mountain obviously agree, and you join the both of them to participate in the duel. When you meet with the challengers, you quickly recognize the two in the masks as Wormzone and Bronbar from the Marauders Guild, being accompanied by a woman you don't recognize. You all fight each other, but in the middle of it, this unknown marauder starts to fight more and more like Curious George. Wormzone tells his group to stop attacking, but the stranger refuses to listen. Instead, she tosses everyone around her aside, apart from you and Broken Mountain. You and Mountain both recognize what's happening. She is losing control of her inner beast, just as George had before. Just like him, the two of you are forced to defeat her, so she snaps out of it. After the fight, she introduces herself and explains the situation. Her name is Dorogano from the Coral Clan, a group of people that uses the ferociousness of one's inner beast to fight, but outcasts those that can control themselves. After being exiled herself, Dorogano starts to look for someone who can teach her how to control it so she can go back home, leading her to Eorzea and eventually all of you. Broken Mountain sympathizes and decides to take her under his wing, but George seems oddly shaken up. Over time, you help Dorogano and Broken Mountain to do more missions for the Maelstrom and start making progress in her self-control, while you yourself get stronger in the process. Unfortunately, the same could not be said for George, who hasn't recovered from being tossed aside so easily by Dorogano. In fact, he hasn't been able to call upon his inner beast at all. With the Maelstrom planning another operation, Mountain comes up with the idea to put Dorogano in the middle of battle with his troops to hopefully have her use her inner beast to protect others just like you and George were able to do. George, meanwhile, keeps acting weird around all of you and keeps bumping into you three. In fact, he stumbled upon your last operation in the ruins after going for a stroll nearby. This time, Mountain asks for him to join you all and meet with you later. While trying to join them, you get ambushed, delaying your arrival. By the time you meet up with the others, Mountain and his troops lie battered and bruised. While they're all stable, he asks you to hurry ahead and help George and Dorogano. You rush to their aid, seeing George in a similar state as his brother. Dorogano, on the other hand, stands on her 2 feet, undefeated. She looks bloodthirsty, but as soon as your eyes meet, her rage subsides, and the operation is deemed a success. George looks taken aback by this, and while everyone regroups and celebrates together, George is nowhere to be found. While you worry about him, Mountain assures you that he's okay. George's own struggle is within himself, and Mountain knows exactly why. Curious George is in love. Now that Dorogano knows she can return home, she makes plans to go back. The day that she leaves, Broken Mountain notices that George has gone missing. He hears word that Wormzone saw him board a ship to chase Dorogano and asks to make sure that nothing happens to him. By the time you reach George, he wastes no time explaining that Dorogano's village is under attack. Sadly, it's far too late, and you meet with Dorogano standing over the ruins of her own home. Thankfully, everyone that lived there was able to evacuate, but the source of destruction were outcasts from the tribe who believe their inner beasts are gifts from a goddess named the Dusk Mother. Dorogano vows revenge, wanting to earn the trust of her people, and asks that both you and George help her achieve it. As Dorogano gathers more information on where to find the people who destroyed her home, you and George do some odd jobs to give him some time to reflect. Finally, he realizes why he's been unable to bring out his inner beast, why he's been unable to call upon his strength since he was tossed aside so easily. He is in love with Dorogano, and acknowledging it at long last brings back his strength. Wanting to confess his love to her, the two of you return, but she interrupts any attempts at this with urgent news. She has a lead on the outcasts, the Chagan, and leaves to stop an attack they're planning. You try to go, but George asks you for a favor before you take off. He still has fear, and in his frustration, he asks for one thing he knows he can rely on: the slap of Eorzea's strongest warrior. You stop the Chagan together, but just as soon as you got Curious George back to his normal self, you and Dorogano see him start to lose control once again. You attempt to do what you've always done to break through to him, but this time, Dorogano snaps him out herself by professing her love for him. George comes clean about his feelings, and Dorgano even asks for him to stay with her and start fresh, but George still doubts himself. She may have calmed him this time, but he wants to make sure he never hurts the person he loves the most. He vows to return to her once he knows he is worthy of her love, once he knows he has control over his inner beast. You and George travel back to Limsa Lominsa, and he departs for the Maelstrom to go back to training on his own. Broken Mountain has faith his brother will succeed, and you all go your separate ways, for now. After some time, you meet with Curious George again and share with him all the things you've accomplished since you last met. While both of you have grown stronger, it's clear that you are still growing stronger at a faster rate. He believes that because he can't get Dorgano out of his mind, he can't fully concentrate on himself. However, he hasn't heard from her in a while. Speaking with you, he convinces himself that he has to see her and takes off. Coincidentally, Dorgano and her father, Lufsen, show up as he leaves to thank all the people that helped the Corel clan. You bring them to Broken Mountain since George has left, only to find that Mountain hasn't been able to fight for some time. Lufsen asks you to gather ingredients for an elixir to help him, and when you bring him back what he needs to make it, he decides to confide in you. He made the trip to Eorzea for more reasons than just to show thanks to the people who helped his clan. He is here because he's gotten wind of Dorgano falling in love with someone far from home, and he feels 100% certain that it's you. Dorgano interrupts your conversation before you can clarify, and you all return to Mountain to give him the elixir. While he finishes drinking, Lufsen tells you that there's one last step to restore Mountain's fighting spirit. You have to hit him as hard as you can, without holding back. You strike him with a heavy swing, and Broken Mountain stands tall, feeling his inner beast return to him. Before you can all properly celebrate, George comes back and sees Dorgano smiling with you, putting him into a jealous rage. Fortunately, with one strike, she brings him back to his senses, and he apologizes for jumping to conclusions. Lufsen sees how well Dorgano and George get along, and he tells her that while she isn't ready to be wed, she should continue her training here in Eorzea. The couple rejoices that they can train together, but George reminds you that despite how strong you've become, that now he and his brother are back in full form, they now aim to surpass you. I hope you guys enjoyed this video as much as I enjoyed reading this for you. If you want to hear more of me, come by my stream sometime at twitch.tv/Eorzea, and if you'd like to hear more Final Fantasy lore, let me know which job you'd like me to cover next. Thanks for watching.